On this week's episode of The Insider, Rob will update us on some significant decisions made by the Hanford City Council, plus a check on the very busy fall calendar. Then, Thomas Curtis stops by to talk about the local real estate market, and I'll be back with highlights and scores from Week 1 of the high school football season. This is the Hanford Insider for Monday, August 26th.
Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of the Hanford Insider. I'm your host, Rob Bentley. Thanks for listening. For those of you who are new to the show, the Hanford Insider is a weekly podcast that releases every Monday. I cover a little bit of everything from Hanford news, a community calendar, and my son Eric, who works in sports, gives us a rundown of high school sports each week during the school year. I try to keep things light and positive in such a negative world. I hope you enjoy the format. I'm always looking for more human interest stories. A little bit later in the show, I'll let you know how you can get involved. In community news, if you haven't heard yet, the Downtown Traffic and Pedestrian Improvement Project has been paused. After failing to pass an agreement with the project manager, the project is on hold and the city will have to look at additional options to complete the project. Stay tuned for updates. The filing period has closed for the November 5th elections, and we now know who will be vying to be on the Hanford City Council. Nancy Howes, co-owner of Renewable Solar, and Judy Scott, a retired correction officer, are vying to fill the seat representing District C that was vacated by Diane Sharp in April. Things are going to get interesting in District B. If you recall, Kalish Morrow resigned in May, and the council appointed former council member Martin Devine to complete the vacated term. He'll be in the race to stay on the council. He'll be challenged by Alfred Benavides and Kember Reagan. Voters in Hanford will also vote on 9 local measures, several state measures, multiple local and state candidates, and federal officials, including the president in the November election. Make sure you're registered. In a few weeks, we'll have Kings County Register voters Lupe Villa back on the show to give us a rundown on the election timeline. The city held a webinar last Wednesday evening, and about 30 of us attended the Zoom. City Manager Mario Cifuentes, Police Chief Stephanie Huddleston, and Communications Manager Brian Johnson led a discussion regarding Measure H, the tax revenue measure on the November 5th ballot. There were some really good questions. You should check out the other activities they're having to educate the public. They include an in-person meeting on September 12th and another virtual meeting on October 7th. Follow the city's social media accounts or check the city website for a complete list of educational events. Next week, I'll have 3 members of the Revenue Measure Committee on the show to share their experiences from being on the committee. Here are some things coming up on our community calendar. At this week's Thursday Night Marketplace, it's Vendor Appreciation Night with music by Exodus, which plays Latin and R&B. The Kings Players are presenting Outward Bound. Evening performances on Fridays and Saturdays begin at 7 p.m. There are also select matinee performances. Visit kingsplayers.org for tickets and information. Part 2 of Kings County's Asian Experiences opens on Friday, September 6th at the Carnegie Museum of Kings County. Part 2 showcases local Asian communities in the years following World War II. Specific displays focus on the histories, cultures, and traditions of Japanese, Chinese, Filipino, and Hmong in the area. For more information, visit carnegiemuseumofkingscounty.org. Women with Visions Unlimited will be presenting their all-white party on Saturday, September 7th at the Kings Arts Center. Tickets are $50 in advance and $60 at the door. If you have an event coming up and you'd like some help getting the word out, let's work together. Send your information to hanfordinsider@gmail.com. Be sure to subscribe to my weekly newsletter to get a complete calendar of events.
I
had the amazing opportunity to sell a house recently and purchase another one, and it could not have been done better by anyone other than my good friend Thomas Curtis, and he is with me here this afternoon. And Thomas, welcome to the show.
Rob, I'm honored to be here, man. Love you like a brother, and honored to be able to get to work with you and Lois, and yeah, amazing.
Thomas, you were originally not from this area. What brought you to this area? And tell us a little bit about your schooling and maybe what led you to the area of real estate.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. Thanks for asking. My father was in the military for about 24 years, and we moved to Lemoore in 2000, right before, right after that .com bust. Everyone thought internet was going to go under. I thought the clocks weren't going to reset, honestly. We moved here, and we moved from Oceanside, California, which is down south. I could walk to the beach in 30 minutes, and then we moved to beautiful town of Lemoore, where I took a shower, and it smelled worse getting out than you went in, and and you came over here, and it was 115 degrees every summer, and it was just a definitely different environment. But my father, retiring here is what brought us here. As far as real estate, the story behind that, I was going to college, and my family was going through some really hard times. My dad had a adjustment leaving the military, which you can imagine, right? 24 years in the military and then trying to find something after, and it didn't work out. So our family was going through some hard times. We were losing our house. It was the middle of all the craziness. I was working 4 jobs to help pay the mortgage for a couple of years, and there was one night I got in a car accident. Yeah, I got in a car accident because I fell asleep driving because I was working too much. Hit a tree at about 60, 65 miles an hour. And I'm still here, still kicking. What happened after that, my mom, had a kind of like a breakdown, right? She had a breakdown after a car accident. We losing everything, and she was having a really hard time. And I went into her room, and she had her head in between her legs, just sobbing, just in her closet, just sobbing. And it just broke my heart. I ran to my room. I just started bawling. And after that day, I said, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do something to change my family tree. And going to school at that point, I met a local teacher, Monty Payton. He was a business teacher. I originally wanted to go to school to be a PE teacher and do some kinesiology, and ended up going into business. And Monty Payton was a big proponent in that and taught me a bunch of stuff. And I got turned on to Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And he said real estate was one of the things that made a lot of people wealthy. So I said, hey, I'm going to jump on that, I guess. And it's always had a draw. And I'm in real estate, thank God, over 10 years in business now. So it was cool. But in the very beginning, I couldn't even afford the dues to the MLS. There's a couple grand or something like that. And I had a friend who actually paid my dues for me. So I was able to join her team. And shout out to Jamie Tulak. Thank you, Jamie. And she paid my dues, and off to the races we went. So
the real estate family, there's a whole network. I've learned all of this, kind of a crash course in it. There's a real good network of agents, and the way that you work together, and connection, the interconnection between all of the agencies and all the lending firms and everything. And we could probably do a whole show on that, I'm sure. Let's get to some specifics here about real estate in the Hanford and Lemoore area. Let's start with the new rules that just came down, because that seems to be a hot topic about how agent commission fees are collected. Can you just give us, in a nutshell, kind of the new policies and how that will affect home buyers?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this is just how we run our business and our interpretation and what we're executing here at Keller Williams and on our team. But really, the big thing, I would just want to let everyone know that there's going to be a lot that's going to stay the same. The techniques and the how things are getting executed have changed a little bit. And at the end of the day, buyers are still going to buy and sellers are still going to need to sell. So with that, NAR came, there was a big lawsuit. They're saying agents were commingling. Real estate commissions have always been negotiable. They've never been set, right? So they've always been negotiable. So they had a big lawsuit. They say it was fixed at 6%, which is not true. but they got the lawsuit. They ended up suing, and then we had a couple big brokerages settle. And so what we have today, as of the 17th of August, here in California, nationwide, now they have completely decoupled, right? It's a weird word. Pretty much that means just split the buyers and listing agents commission. So as a seller now, we just listed a house last week. As a selling agent, we negotiate our commissions with the listing, the sellers. But we do not have the buyer's commission on there, which we normally would. So that's the big change. There's no commission on there for the buyers. We recommend 100% that sellers use compensation to compensate buyers, agents coming in, because what ends up happening is if you don't offer compensation as a seller to a buyer, you're not going to get the cream of the crop. Right now, 90% of people use buyers agents. And part of the things you were talking about earlier of getting pre-qualified, making sure you're with a good lender, making sure you guide the buyers through a process, that is a lot of work. So the buyer's agent does deserve to be compensated also. So listing side, sellers are paying the listing agent's commission. It's negotiated. There's no more buyer's commission on that paperwork. The buyer's agent now has to sit down with their buyer and say, hey, here's my value proposition. This is why I'm worth X amount of percent. And they sign a buyer broker agreement, and then they're off showing the houses. It's no different than if you were to go to an attorney and saying, hey, represent me. All right. Okay. This is what I charge as a retainer. These are my fees. So very same thing. But as buyers, what ends up happening is the buyer's agent then negotiates the commission to the seller. So they still write the offer, and they will likely still submit, hey, Mr. Seller, Mrs. Seller, this is my offer, and I know there's no compensation on the MLS anymore, but here's my request. So it could be a percentage, and then there's a negotiation from there. So buyers and sellers split, buyers agents negotiate their own commission now.
That's quite a change, but and again, in a lot of ways, it's not. People, if people do their job right, you probably won't even notice it, as we talked about earlier. Let's get on to some fun topics here. There are a ton of new housing developments in Hanford. We think of 12th and Hume. We think of 13th and Centennial. And Lemoore, there's some out by Lemoore College there at 198 and Bush. So what have you seen that's drawing people to our community and purchasing these homes?
Some of the big things, really, the culture here, when I moved from Oceanside to here, I was shell-shocked of everything, because night and day culture change. And the area, obviously. And what I've seen with that now is this area I feel like we're in a bubble. Like Kings County, Central Valley, I feel like we're in a bubble. Like we are just different. And I feel like specifically our area here in Hanford and Kings County, there is a good draw for family. We don't have a ton of crime, right? And I think a big draw is the price point. Our price point, our average sales price right now is approximately around $370 here in, Kings County. And I mean, I travel a lot, and I mean, people are, every time they hear California, they're like, oh, 700,000 must be your, and I'm like, we live in a different part of California. So I see that as a big draw. Obviously the military base has a big draw. And I really do believe affordability and the culture of the area and the growth, the things that the city's doing, and different organizations are doing to make the environment more fun, is drawing people from even Visalia and Fresno. We've seen a lot of people are coming from out of the area. It's hard to dial in deep, but there's about 30 to 40% of our people on a monthly basis in our MLS, multiple listing service, that are from out of the area, right? So almost, 30-40% of the people moving here are not from Kings County, or their agents aren't from Kings County. So they're coming here and they're finding that this is actually a really good place to live.
I know that you were into flipping houses and doing well on that, and that was all the rage on HGTV and everything. Do you see many houses being flipped in maybe the downtown Central District or other parts of Hanford that people are finding maybe a fixer-upper that they can live in?
Yeah, no, we do see. We've right now, I would say probably the the people who are buying, including us, who are buying houses now, our model and how we run our numbers has changed a little bit with, the market and everything like that. We're about 40 something days on the market. So we do see a lot. I have a buddy who bought 10 houses last month to flip or turn into a rental. I see downtown. I don't see a ton like downtown. I do see businesses coming in, but I do see a lot of the older houses, spread down a little bit wider in Hanford. A lot of the older houses are getting bought because really the way that we run our numbers and how it makes sense for us. I don't know if I can talk numbers on here, but we bought a flip in Kingsburg and it took us about 8 months to sell it. And I spent $90,000 renovating and made $3,000. Right.
Yeah,
that's not, I didn't lose money. So, that was awesome. But at the same time, it was a good learning experience. So as you go into markets like this, when you're maybe an investor and you're uneasy, you're like, hey, what does the next 6 months look like? Or because we think because it takes about 6 months or so to buy, renovate, and all that. I love older houses. I love older properties. Those take obviously a lot longer because you have a lot to do. I felt like last year most of the houses I bought were, I feel like between 1920 and 1940. I'm like, man, can I get a newer house? But those older houses need a lot of work, and not a lot of people are willing to go in and do a foundation, electrical, plumbing, HVAC. I mean, literally everything, roof, window. Not a lot of people are willing to do that.
Things have to come up to code, I would imagine, for 2024.
Yeah, they have to come up to code. So, and that's a big change too. Now in the flipping game, if you do flip a house, you have to turn in the contractor that you use. You need their information. You need the permits. So as you flip that, even in our industry, like the game's changing on that also.
So the topic of Airbnbs and rentals in Hanford, and people, for those of you listening, go ahead and go to Airbnb and look how many rentals there are, how many units there are in Hanford for rent. And it was kind of a unique exploration for my wife and I as we were looking at what the transition time might have been between selling a house and moving into a new one. But tell us a little bit about the Airbnb market in Hanford, Lemoore.
Great question, Rob. So Rob mentions that because not knowing the time frame, I talked to him and his wife, just letting them know that, hey, we have a few Airbnbs in town, and with that, if stuff did not work out how we'd like to, that is an option to jump in there for a short period of time while the new construction house was getting built. We have about 5 in town, 3, a few in Hanford, some in Lemoore. And every time I tell people that, they're like, what? Airbnbs in Hanford and Lemoore? Like, who the heck rents these things? And we've had everything from, nurses to people visiting military families to, up and down, like, the surf ranch. We've had people at the surf ranch. Actually, one of our Airbnbs is named Jerry's house near the surf ranch. So that's our neighbor's house, and we Airbnb that thing goes out all the time. But what I've seen, you have random people renting, and what I do like about it is more the midterm to long-term rentals. Like we've been doing it for about 3 or 4 years now, Airbnbs. So what I've seen is we rent. We have a few of them right now that are. We have somebody with an insurance claim. They had a plumbing blow up in their house, and they're probably going to be 6 to 8 months in one of our Airbnbs. And similar, we had a fire burn one. We have a beekeeper that stays 3 or 4 months every year for the past 3 years. We've had them stay in one of our Airbnbs. So, doctors. We've had stay. That lady who came and sang, the one that's from Hanford that was on American Idol,
Danny Stacy.
Yeah, Danny Stacy. Danny Stacy stayed in one of our Airbnbs. Her mother and her did, because it was right around the corner from the Fox Theater here in town. So I love that one. It was right near KFC, walking distance to downtown and all the fun stuff. So yeah, it's a fun topic. Those are always that's a really fun topic because people don't believe you when you say, "Hey, Kings County Airbnbs, that will never work." We're making money, and it's fun. It's a lot of work, though.
Yeah, I think where I've seen it too is if you read the reviews on some of these, you really kind of get to see what people are renting these for. You have maybe like a family reunion or a party or something like that, and they need some extra space. That's a great opportunity for them to be able to do that rather than staying at a hotel. Not that our hotels in Hanford are nice, but it's a great place to just kind of spread out and relax.
Yeah, when you have I think we had one last week. They had a party at Jerry's Surf Ranch Airbnb, and there was a bunch of people over there and 30 plus people, and it was just a bigger space than they had, and it was a family, older, family. They were just celebrating, and it was awesome. It was fun. We got to look at them, and they were just having a great time. So it is a different alternative, than a hotel, but in Hanford and Kings County, they have some great hotels.
Let's wrap this up with your crystal ball. I want you to put on your thinking cap. And you tend to be someone who needs to look ahead and forecast kind of what is down the pipe as far as real estate in the area. And in our discussions, we've talked about national, elections can play a big part in it. But what do you foresee in your Thomas Curtis cap there? What do you foresee happening in the next couple of years?
Oh man, that is a loaded question there, Rob. There's a lot. What I want to kind of lay a foundation is a big picture, and then I'll bring it small. Nationwide, after the big bust of '08 and all that, per decade, the United States has built about 20 million houses, give or take a year, around there, right? And that decade, after 2008, I felt like they just stopped. I think they ended up building around 6 million that decade. Well, population hasn't really slowed down since then. So we took a 10 plus million unit count hit that decade. Well, people were still being born. People were still, all of that. And it still took us, now we're decade and a half almost later, and even this last decade, I think they were still around, give or take, 15 million. So that's still a shortfall around 5 million. So you're looking at it, we're still roughly an estimate of about 20 million houses short of what we would normally have been, right? And what I'm getting at is population growth and inventory, right? Inventory is still at an all-time low, even for our area. Before COVID, it was on Kings County, we had about 250 to 300 houses at any time here in Kings County for sale. Now we're hovering, around the low 100s to 150 houses for sale. So population is a big thing. I want to drill in population and the lack of houses. That is a big thing. The second one is there's probably 90% of people in the U.S. who have an interest rate under like 5%. If they have a mortgage, I think 45 to 50 percent of people who have a mortgage in the United States are free and clear. But the people who have a mortgage in the United States, a huge amount of them are under 4 or 5%. All right. So those are just putting that information so you guys can see that out there. With the election coming up, to tell you the truth, my thought pattern is this: the United States has foregone a path already. They have set a path, and doesn't matter who is in an election. It might speed up that path or might slow down depending what side is on there. Us and our business, I see where the path is going, and people are still going to have to buy houses. They're still going to have to sell. They still have life events. I know people, I say the people who are going to have to move in this era of life are, either going to have a life event or one of the 4 Ds, right? Death, disease, divorce, disaster, or some kind of life event that's going to make you have a 2% mortgage to sell and buy another house. So there's different life events. So from what I see, what's going to go on, my opinion is inventory is still low. The world's changing a lot, and I don't see things getting any cheaper, right? The real estate world, we've been in a recession for years already. So the economy outside of real estate hasn't. right? So if we do come into a recession, which numbers are looking like we are, even our financial, as a nation, our financial, stuff is changing. It's going to take a few years still for that to implement, but I just don't, the way we're going, I mean, if you imagine we've been a nation for almost 250 years, 240-ish of those years, it took us to amass almost $10 trillion in debt. From 2000 to in the last 4 years, we've amassed triple that. Now our debt's, 30 something, 30, I don't know, 35, 34, right? So what took us 240 years to do, we tripled that in 4 years. So something's going to have to change. And United States is broke, Russia's broke, China's broke. All these people are broke. So what I see is the financial system is changing just like it did in 1971. And how that's going to have an effect on the real estate market, I believe it's just going to make things more expensive. And if you can buy a house now, I would highly recommend you buy a house, because I know my kids, right? I just had my oldest graduate high school, and I'm like, oh man, it's just another stage of parenting. And already, because she sees it, she's like, Dad, I can never afford a house. I was like, you don't say that. You do not say that.
My kids as well.
So to get out of that, to get out of that mindset, like you can afford a house. Let's show you how to do it, and put you on a plan. So my forecast really is, in the next coming years, even if the economy hits a recession, what happens in a recession? They know that real estate is the engine of the country, so they normally incentivize real estate. And I don't know about you, but with these high interest rates, I know a lot of people who are just waiting for them to drop, and then they are saying, hey, I'm all in. And so my response to them is always like, hey, do you think you're the only one with that thought? Would you rather pay a little bit higher interest rate and refinance later, or go in when there's, 100 more people in the market and they have more money than you, so they'll outbid you again? That's kind of what happened in 2001. I saw people paying $30,000 over appraisal, and it was just wild. Like I sold a house, or I saw a house as a comp, and then next door, somebody $30,000 over asking cash over appraisal. And I was like, this is wild, right? Why? Because the interest rates were lower. So my vision of the next couple of years is things will probably get a little bit more expensive. The cost of living is going to get a little bit more expensive. So get into a house, lock it in. The famous saying, buy the house, date the rate type of thing, right? Marry the house, date the rate, and refinance. And I truly believe that in the big scope of things, I mean, most Americans, their house is is where they get most of their wealth from, and if the big companies are doing it, for the first time in ever, you have BlackRock and all these big companies are spending billions of dollars buying residential. If the biggest companies in the world are doing it, we should probably be doing it too.
That's some great information, Thomas. And thank you for hanging out this afternoon and giving us quite a detailed look at the local real estate market and maybe where it's headed in the next few years. A lot of questions come up, and I just asked a couple of them, but I know other people are going to have questions. How can they reach you and your agency to maybe get some of their questions answered about real estate?
Yeah, no, that's great. I appreciate it. Again, Rob, it's an honor coming in here and hanging out with you. I would say that probably the best way to get a hold of me would be just go on my Instagram, Thomas, THOMAS.CURTISS, Thomas.Curtis, and just shoot me a message on there. That's probably the best way. If you have any real estate questions, if you're looking at getting into real estate, we also have a school locally, in person and on Zoom, that you can jump in on, and we're here to serve.
That's awesome, Thomas. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
And now it's time for Hanford Insider Sports with Eric Bentley.
High school football got underway Thursday and will start on the road as Hanford High traveled to Bakersfield to take on Kennedy. The game was tied at 22 at halftime, but the Bullpups pulled away in the second half to secure a 45-29 victory. The explosiveness was on full display as the Bullpups scored on a 63-yard touchdown pass, a 75-yard kickoff return, and a 49-yard rushing touchdown. Cordy Glass and Tavion Patterson finished the game with 2 touchdowns apiece, while Daniel Gomez tossed for 2 and rushed for another. Hanford will be on the road again this week as they travel to Apache territory on Friday for another tough matchup with Sanger. Hanford West was in action on Thursday as well, but fell to Fowler in their home opener by a final of 35-13. The Huskies will have another chance to pick up a home win this week as Corcoran comes to town. And finally, Sierra Pacific took the field on Friday, unfortunately losing a tough battle against Woodlake 20-19. The Golden Bears got off to a slow start, trailing 13-0 at the half, but were able to give themselves a chance in the second half. Trailing 20-13, Sierra Pacific scored what looked like the game-tying touchdown with only seconds left, but the extra point was blocked, preserving a 20-19 victory for the Tigers. The Golden Bears will look to bounce back as they hit the road for a showdown with Golden Valley on Friday. We'd like to cover as many local sports as we can, so if you have a score report or a story idea, make sure to email hanfordinsider@gmail.com. I'm Eric Bentley, and this has been your Hanford Insider Sports Report.
That's all the time we have for this week's show. Join me next week when I sit down with members of the Hanford Revenue Measure Committee to see what they learned during their study of needs for the city of Hanford. If you enjoyed this podcast and you'd like to show your support, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/Hanford Insider to make a donation. If you'd like to join the Hanford Insider email list, stop by my website at hanfordinsider.com to sign up for updates. You'll also get an exclusive copy of my newsletter in your inbox each week. You can send me feedback by voicemail through the website by clicking on the microphone icon. I'd love to hear from you. Your comments may even be shared on the show. I also need your help getting the word out about the show by liking and sharing on social media or telling a friend. For more information about the show, you can find this podcast on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, and YouTube at Hanford Insider. If you have a show idea, be sure to email me at hanfordinsider@gmail.com and I'll look into it. Thanks for listening. Have a great week.